It was Labor Day, San Francisco, 1921. Up on the 12th floor of the Grand St. Francis Hotel, the party was in full swing. Prohibition was the law of the land, but that didn't stop the flow of bootleg gin. Not here. Not for a star like Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. He was one of the biggest names in Hollywood, a king of comedy, pulling in $1 million a year. He had come to the city to get away, to celebrate a new contract with a few friends. The music was loud. The laughter was louder. The drinks were being poured with a generous hand. A classic Prohibition-era bash, hidden in plain sight, high above the city streets, and what begins as a celebration can end in a way that no one, absolutely no one, could ever see coming. Who was Virginia Rappe? Before she was a headline, she was a girl from Chicago, born out of wedlock, raised by her grandmother. She had dreams, big ones. She worked as a model. She was an artist's muse. Her face graced commercial art. She made her way to Hollywood, drawn by the flicker of the silver screen. She wasn't a major star, not yet, but she was getting there, bit by bit. She landed small roles in comedies, dramas, working alongside some of the era's biggest names. The man she was set to marry, a well-known designer named Robert Moskowitz, had been killed in a taxi accident in Paris just a year earlier. She suffered from health problems, recurring bladder infections that caused her intense pain. The party had been going on for hours, the jazz was playing, the gin was flowing, and then something happened. Something in room 1219. The details are murky, contested. According to some witnesses, Roscoe Arbuckle took Virginia Rappe into the bedroom. He was in his pajamas, they said. He closed the door. What happened next depends on who you ask. Some heard laughter from inside the room. That's what one witness, Bambina Maud Delmont, would later claim. She said she heard Virginia screaming in pain from behind the locked door. She banged on it, demanding to be let in. When the door finally opened, she said, she found Virginia on the bed, writhing in agony, her clothes torn.
He did this to me.
Arbuckle's story was different, completely different. He said he found Virginia in the bathroom, sick and vomiting. He insisted he had done nothing to harm her. He said he helped her to the bed, thinking she had simply had too much to drink. Virginia was moved to another room to rest. A hotel doctor was called. Her condition seemed to improve, then worsened dramatically. The pain was unbearable. 2 days later, she was moved to a hospital, but it was too late. On September 9th, 4 days after the party at the St. Francis Hotel, Virginia Rappe was dead. The official cause of death was a ruptured bladder and peritonitis. But how did it happen? Was it a chronic medical condition that finally, tragically gave way? Or was it something else? Something violent? Something criminal? The questions hung in the air, thick and heavy. The news of Virginia Rappe's death spread like wildfire. Rumors began to fly, newspapers and gossip everywhere. Wild, sensational, pretty damning. Maud Delmont, the key witness, told a story that was repeated and kept getting more and more embellished. All suspicion focused on the biggest name in the room, Roscoe "Fatty" Arbuckle. He was famous. He was powerful. He was there. The narrative took shape. The lovable, funny fat man was painted as a monster. Rumors took on a grotesque life of their own. The infamous claim he used his immense weight to injure Virginia. An even more lurid, physically impossible story circulated involving a champagne bottle, a Coca-Cola bottle. There was no evidence, not a shred. But in the court of public opinion, evidence doesn't always matter. They fed a growing view of Hollywood as Sodom and Gomorrah, adding fuel. San Francisco DA Matthew Brady, hungry for a name. He listened to Maud Delmont and charged Arbuckle with murder. The charge was later reduced to manslaughter, but the damage was done. The funny man was now a possible killer. The public, fed sensational headlines, acted as judge and jury. The legal battle that followed was a spectacle, not one trial, but 3. A media circus unlike anything seen before. The prosecution's case rested almost entirely on Maud Delmont, but on the stand, her story began to fall apart. She had a long criminal record, including extortion. Then came the bombshell, a telegram. "We have Roscoe Arbuckle in a hole here, chance to make big money." Devastating to her credibility. The jury was deadlocked, 10-2 in favor of acquittal. A second trial was held. They argued Arbuckle had assaulted Virginia, and that this assault had indirectly caused her bladder to rupture. The defense brought in medical experts who said there was no evidence of assault. They argued Virginia's bladder, weakened by chronic cystitis, could have ruptured from the strain of vomiting. Finally, a third trial began in March 1922. They put Roscoe on the stand. He was calm, consistent, believable. Doctors testified they found no marks of violence on Virginia's body. None. There was no physical evidence of assault. The jury took 6 minutes to deliberate. 5 of those minutes were spent writing a formal apology. The verdict, not guilty. Legally, he was exonerated. Completely. Long before the jury delivered its verdict, another trial had been taking place. A trial by newspaper. This was a new era of journalism, driven by sensationalism and soaring circulation. William Randolph Hearst led the charge. The bottle story, with zero evidence, was repeated until it became legend. They ignored contradictory evidence and amplified anyone who'd speak ill of Arbuckle. It tapped deep cultural anxieties. Religious groups seized on the tale, demanding censorship and a cleanup of Hollywood. Even after acquittal, the damage was irreversible. They remembered the headlines, not the testimony, the rumors, not the autopsy reports. So what really happened in room 1219? The trials are over, the witnesses are gone, but the mystery remains. That's what the evidence suggests. A tragic, unfortunate medical event. Virginia Rapp's chronic bladder condition was a ticking time bomb. The physical strain that day may have caused the fatal rupture. The scandal forced Hollywood to police itself. The Hays Office, morals clauses, tamer films. Roscoe Arbuckle was a free man, but his career was in ruins.